Hi, I'm Mark David Gerson. Welcome to Stories and Reflections, where my stories are also yours. There's a scene in my novel The Moon Quest where Toshar, the main character, wakes up from a dream only to find himself not where he fell asleep, but high up on a celestial plateau. That's how I describe it in the book. A celestial plateau that's way, way up in the sky, higher even than the two suns. In the world of the Moon Quest, there's not one sun, but two. And he looks down and you see these two tiny little pinpricks of light way down below, and solid ground is so far below he can't even really see it. Well, he wakes up on this celestial plateau and he's wearing different clothes and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know where to go, how to get off. He gets up and he walks around the plateau, the circumference of the plateau, and sees no way down. And so he goes back to sit under the tree where he woke up, and he's upset and scared and he hugs himself. And as he hugs himself, he feels in his breast pocket something that wasn't there before. Well, in fact, the breast pocket wasn't there before because he's wearing clothes he wasn't wearing before. And he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a book. It's bound in rich crimson leather. It has a golden moon crest on the cover. And as he opens the book, the title page says, "The Journeys of Toshar, Son of Amdar and Tiana." And underneath it, in smaller type, it says, "Being the Chronicles of a Young Bard in Quest of the Moon." And he turns the page, but there is no text on the next page. There is simply a map. A map that actually traces his life through the hideaway villages of his early childhood, all the way to when he's sent out onto this quest. As he turns each page and studies each map, the map comes alive with an image, with a scene from his life. And he keeps turning the pages until he gets to the present moment. And there it shows him sitting under the tree where he woke up. And the title of that page, because each page is titled with some indication of when and where it is. The title of that page says, "Highest of the High at the Top of the World." And it shows him again sitting under the tree with his book. And as he looks at the map on the page, he sees a broad curving road forming at the cliff edge and descending through the clouds of the parchment page of the book. Well, he's excited. He turns the page to see what's next. But there's no map on the next page. There's only abstract swirls and whorls and lines and spirals that grow fainter with each succeeding page. It's all very abstract, very unformed. So he gets up and he walks to where on the map the road shows, and suddenly he sees a crystalline, almost translucent road fall away from the precipice in a spiraling sweep that vanishes into the clouds in the distance. So he tentatively sets his foot down to see if it'll hold his weight, and it does. So he steps onto it and begins to walk. And as the road moves away from the cliff edge, from this celestial plateau, the road itself kind of melts away. The road behind him is gone, and he can only see the road a few steps ahead. The road only forms as he steps along it. He can't go back, and the only way is forward. The only way is forward, step by step. The funny thing, I suppose, maybe not so, maybe not so funny, this road that he's on, this road that kind of emerged on the page for me, is not something I planned, because I didn't plan this book at all. I didn't know anything about this book at all as I began to write it, or really as it began to write me. I wrote this book, The Moon Quest, my first book, very much as Toshar travels this road, word by words, paragraph by paragraph, scene by scene, not knowing from one moment, one word to the next, where the story was going, where the story was taking me, any more than Toshar knew as he traveled this road, where it was taking him other than down. So let me tell you a little bit about the Moon Quest story and about Toshar. Imagine if just saying the words "once upon a time," those four words that evoke so much for us, imagine if just saying those words "once upon a time" could get you thrown into jail, or worse. And that's what it's like in the land of the Moon Quest. You're not allowed to imagine, you're not allowed to dream, you're not allowed to tell stories. So, of course, you're not allowed to say "once upon a time." And all you can do is focus on facts. I say facts, but these are official facts, the facts that are put out by the king and his minions. So they're not necessarily objective facts. They're what are being put out as facts. And there isn't much you can do with these facts because without imagination, there's no wisdom. And without imagination, there's no discernment. And this has been going on in Quintana for a very long time, for generations, in fact. And legend has it that the moon grew so sad at the loss of stories, at the silence in the land, that she cried tears that put out her light, that extinguished her light. So the moon has not been seen in many years, and that's the quest in the Moon Quest, to bring story back to the land and light back to the moon. I have to insert a little aside here, because you might think from the Moon Quest story I've just shared that I wrote this recently about current events, and that could not be farther from the truth. I began writing the Moon Quest in 1994 in Toronto, and I finished the first draft a year later in rural Nova Scotia. That it might bear any relation to current events just shows that my stories are smarter than I am, and that when I get out of the way of the telling of them, they are far more imaginative, far more compelling, and far more relevant than I could have consciously made them. And I'll also point out that since the first edition of the Moon Quest was published in 2007, people have constantly come up to me or emailed me or contacted me and commented on how relevant they find the story to current events. And I don't only mean current events in the United States, I mean current events in many, many different countries. Now, back to the story. So where does Toshar come into all of this? Well, he is the young man chosen for this quest. He's part of a small community of bards, of storytellers, who are in hiding to escape death. And as the story begins, as the Moon Quest story begins, he's told by an elder, by an visiting oracle, that it's up to him to lead this Moon Quest. His reaction is pretty much the same that as most of us would have in the face of some scary, life-changing task or mission. He says, "No way in hell." Well, that's not exactly what he says, but that's the tenor of what he says. So it takes some doing, but Toshar is finally talked into it, and he sets off, picking up some companions along the way. The problem is he's given pretty much nothing in the way of direction. All he's told is to follow his heart and to trust stories to guide his way, not the stories he already knows, not the stories he's been taught. No, these stories that Toshar must tell to guide him along the way are new stories, must be new stories, stories that come to him only as he tells them, stories that come from the heart. Well, I'm not going to tell you any more about that right now, other than to say that this road he's on, this translucent crystalline road that takes him off this plateau, is really emblematic of the journey he's on, not knowing where he's going except day by day. Very emblematic as well of the way I wrote the story, the way the story came to me, word by word, one day at a time. Toshar was not exactly excited to be sent out on this quest, on this mission. He is very much the reluctant bard, the reluctant hero that many of us would be under similar circumstances. So this is how I write all my books. I don't know much when I start, and I discover the story as I go on. You know, on the back of my first book for writers, The Voice of the Muse, Answering the Call to Write, it says that the book will take you to worlds beyond your conscious imagining. And that's, of course, what my aim with that book is. And that's what I discovered that I did in my own writing, because nothing about the Moon Quest and nothing about my life, for that matter, is anything I could have consciously imagined enough to want, to know that I wanted, to call in, if you will, to affirm. You know, in last week's episode, I talked about how about the writer I nearly wasn't, but about my reluctance to be a writer, about the fact I didn't know that I wanted to be a writer, a storyteller. It was so far from my conscious desire. It was buried so deeply in fear, in fact, that I couldn't know it. It had to be revealed to me. And that's the beauty of living this way, because there's so much in my life that I could never have imagined. I never thought I wanted kids. I have a beautiful daughter. I never thought I wanted to live in the United States. And although this is a challenging time to be here, I've spent more than half my adult life here, and I'm now a dual citizen. I never thought I wanted to be a writer. I've written 24 books. I'm on my 25th. I never expected to be a podcaster. I never had a conscious desire to be a podcaster. And yet here I am doing something I love to do, but didn't know I loved to do. Let's get back to Toshar and his road, because I left him kind of in mid-crystalline road. Eventually, the road takes him where he needs to go, where he needs to be. Not where he started, not back on the plateau, not where he fell asleep, but to someplace else altogether, a place he could not have imagined. So he couldn't have asked to be there. But the place, as I said, he needs to be in order to be able to continue his journey. He's already met his first companion before this adventure on the plateau on the road. He's about to meet his second companion. And to get there, he has to take a leap of faith. So he's on the celestial road. It's slowly spiraling down toward the earth. It takes him through the clouds. He's just, again, a little bit more comfortable, though still a bit wary, because again, he can't see back, and he can't see very much ahead, just another step or two ahead. But at a certain point, the road stops. There is no more road. All there is an opportunity to jump. All he can do is take a leap of faith into the unknown, into the unknowable. And that's kind of why I wanted to share this story with you today, because both the story of the Moon Quest, how the Moon Quest came to be, how the Moon Quest story evolved and revealed itself to me, and how I live my life are all the same, and they all demonstrate for me how important it is to get past my conscious mind, my fearful mind, my ego mind, and allow life to reveal itself, allow my deepest wisdom to reveal itself. One of the images I like to use a lot when I'm teaching writing is the image of the iceberg. Now we see an iceberg in the ocean, and what we're seeing is about 8% of the whole iceberg, and the other 92% lie hidden beneath the surface of the water, hidden in the depths. Our conscious mind, our unconscious mind, our brain, our heart work the same way. What we can see, our conscious imagining, the conscious imagining I spoke about a moment ago, our conscious imagining is at 8%. But the gifts and the magic and the synchronicities and the miracles and all the things we think we can't imagine enough to even know we want them, like me as becoming a writer, all those lie in that 92%. It's hard to trust in the presence of that which we cannot see, that which we cannot understand, that which we cannot imagine. But that's what faith is all about. That's what trust is all about. Or to borrow from Shakespeare, from Hamlet, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy, in our conscious awareness. So as you move forward to your day, in your life as much as in your stories, can you trust in the invisible? Can you trust in the gifts of the invisible, of the unknowable, of the unknown? Can you take those leaps of faith that carry you into places you could never have imagined, even wanting to go, wanting to be, but that hold so many gifts for you? When I left Toronto in 1997, I left on what became a very Toshar-like journey. 3 months, about 14,000 meandering miles through God knows how many states. But one of the first leaps of faith, I guess, I took, not even realizing so much it was a leap of faith, it was just a moment of trust. I'd been on the road for just a couple of weeks, and I had been camping in a campground in Northern Ontario. And I'd written some postcards. And I drove to the nearest post office and dropped my postcards off in the post office. As I'm pulling out of the parking lot, I can go right or I can go left. Well, turning right, turning north would take me back up to the Trans-Canada Highway, which is where I had started. But as I'm at the edge of the parking lot, it's almost as though the car pulled me left, and I turned left. Left took me to the U.S.-Canadian border, to a border crossing into Minnesota. I crossed into the U.S., and I never went back. In a sense, my leap of faith was to turn left instead of right. There's a good chance I wouldn't be recording this episode today in Scottsdale, Arizona, nearly 30 years later, had I turned right instead of left. And there's a good chance I wouldn't have got married. I wouldn't have a wonderful daughter. I wouldn't have written all these books had I turned right that day instead of left. So that crystalline road, that one moment, that one step at a time, is also a reminder to listen, to trust, to listen to your heart, and allow it to guide you to the places your mind cannot even imagine, to those places beyond your conscious imagining, to those places where the miracles are, the magic is, the synchronicities are, the amazing opportunities live. And when we get out of our heads and listen to our heart and follow our intuition, our inner guidance, our inner wisdom, however you want to define it, that's what happens. We open an amazing treasure chest, and life is never, ever the same. Thanks for joining me for Stories and Reflections today. I hope you found moments in my stories that touched something in yours. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And for more of my stories and help telling yours, check out my books at markdavidgerson.com or from online booksellers worldwide. Until next time, don't forget that you're a storyteller too, and keep telling your stories. The intro and outro music for today's episode is Heartwarming by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons.